The armor plate glows white hot, wood 200 degrees Celsius. Hayward Harvey leans closer to the furnace opening, charcoal dust coating his face. His assistants step back. They've seen what happens when superheated steel meets cold water at the wrong angle. Men have died. Equipment has exploded. The insurance company refuses to cover this process. It's October 14th, 1890, at the Joliet Steelworks in Illinois. Harvey adjusts his leather apron and reaches for the crane controls. The 3-ton plate begins its journey toward the quenching tank. In Washington, D.C., Navy Secretary Benjamin Tracy paces his office. The latest intelligence reports confirm his worst fears. European battleships now carry armor that American shells cannot penetrate. The British have Harvey Armor. The French have Harvey Armor. The Germans have Harvey Armor. The United States Navy has nothing. 28 American warships sit vulnerable in Atlantic waters, their outdated iron plates offering protection equivalent to thick cardboard against modern armor-piercing shells. The statistics are damning. In naval trials at Annapolis on September 22, 1890, American-made homogeneous steel plates shattered after just 3 direct hits. European Harvey processed plates withstood 17 impacts before showing penetration. That's a 467% improvement in protection. The casualty projections are equally stark. Naval warfare analysts estimate that in a sustained engagement, American sailors face mortality rates exceeding 60% due to inadequate armor, compared to 18% for crews protected by face-hardened plates. Back in Joliet, Harvey signals his crew. The glowing plate, destined for the USS Texas, plunges into the water. Steam explodes upward in a violent cloud. The building shakes. Rivets pop from overhead beams. What Harvey doesn't know is that a congressional committee meets tomorrow to review his contract. Bethlehem Steel has submitted complaints. Carnegie Steel calls the process recklessly dangerous and impossible to scale for mass production. 3 congressmen have already decided to vote against funding. The U.S. Navy has exactly 14 months of its armor stockpile remaining. In Berlin, German Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz reviews intelligence photographs of American naval construction. He smiles. Without proper armor technology, America's emerging fleet represents no threat to German interests. His aide notes in the margin, American armor program, critical failure likely. Harvey doesn't read German intelligence reports. He reads temperature gauges. And right now, something looks wrong. The story begins not with war, but with wire. In 1865, Thomas Harvey and his son Hayward run a small metalworking shop in Orange, New Jersey. They manufacture screws, nuts, and bolts. Hayward Harvey, then just 41 years old, has no formal engineering education. He attended local schools until age 15, then joined his father's business as a draftsman. His qualification for revolutionizing naval warfare. 26 years of watching hot metal cool, but watching carefully. Traditional armor plate in 1885 comes in 2 deeply flawed varieties. Wrought iron plates, essentially pure iron with trace carbon, bend and deform under impact, offering minimal protection. Cast iron plates contain high carbon content, making them brittle. They shatter on impact, sending lethal spall fragments through ship interiors, killing crews even when shells don't penetrate. European navies experiment with compound armor, hard cast iron faces welded to wrought iron backs, but the welding process creates weak points. British trials at Portsmouth on April 3, 1886, show compound plates failing catastrophically at the weld line in 37% of test firings. Enter steel. By 1885, Bessemer and open hearth processes make steel plates affordable. But steel introduces a new dilemma. Homogeneous steel plates tough enough to resist shattering are too soft to stop armor-piercing shells. Hard steel plates that resist penetration are too brittle. They crack under impact. The metallurgical problem seems impossible. Steel cannot be simultaneously hard and tough throughout its thickness. Expert consensus agrees. You must choose between hardness or toughness. You cannot have both. Admiral David Dixon Porter, the U.S. Navy's senior ordnance expert, testifies before Congress on January 17, 1888. Gentlemen, the laws of metallurgy are fixed. A steel plate of uniform composition must possess uniform properties. We may make it hard, and it will shatter. We may make it tough, and shells will penetrate. There exists no third option. Physics does not negotiate. The stakes escalate dramatically in 1889. British intelligence confirms that French naval architects have designed new armor-piercing shells with hardened steel caps. These caps prevent the projectile from shattering on impact, instead transferring maximum energy to punching through plate. American homogeneous armor, already marginal, becomes obsolete overnight. Failed solutions litter the landscape. Carnegie Steel proposes thicker plates, but thicker soft steel simply means deeper penetration. Bethlehem Iron suggests layered plates with air gaps. Tests show shells punch through all layers. The Navy Department tries nickel-steel alloys, mixing 3.5% nickel with steel for improved toughness. Results from the Annapolis trials on June 12, 1889, show modest improvement. Penetration resistance increases 15%, but plates still fail against concentrated fire. 15% isn't enough. American naval constructors calculate they need at least 300% improvement to match European capabilities. In November 1889, Rear Admiral William T. Sampson submits a confidential memorandum. The United States Navy faces technological obsolescence. Our battleships, conceived as instruments of coastal defense, cannot withstand engagement with modern European warships. Without dramatic improvement in armor protection within 24 months, we must abandon blue water ambitions and accept second-rate naval power status. President Benjamin Harrison reads this memorandum on December 3, 1889. He calls it the most disturbing military intelligence of my administration. American steel mills can produce 10 million tons annually, more than Britain and Germany combined. American shipyards employ 89,000 workers. The USS Maine, USS Texas, and USS Indiana represent investments exceeding $22 million in $1890, nearly $680 million in today's currency. All that capability, all that investment, rendered useless by a metallurgical problem no one can solve. The Navy contracts with 17 different steel manufacturers to explore solutions. Research grants total $2.3 million. Carnegie, Bethlehem, Midvale Steel, and 14 others submit proposals. Hayward Harvey, the screw manufacturer from New Jersey with no engineering degree, is not among them. He submits his patent application on February 11, 1890 anyway. Hayward Augustus Harvey doesn't look like a man who will change naval warfare forever. He's 66 years old, slightly built, with thinning gray hair and wire-rimmed spectacles perpetually sliding down his nose. He walks with a limp. A wire-drawing accident in 1873 crushed his left foot. His clothes smell of coal smoke and machine oil. His credentials for revolutionizing armor plate. He once improved a screw thread design. The Patent Office examiner reviewing his February 1890 application notes in the margin. Applicant has no metallurgical training, no engineering degree from recognized institution. Prior patents concern wire manufacturing equipment and wood planing machinery. Recommends supplementary review by Navy Department Technical Committee. But Harvey has something the trained engineers lack. He's watched metal change properties under heat for 45 years. Not in laboratories, in production, every day, thousands of cycles. He's observed patterns that academic metallurgists working with small test samples never see. His insight comes not from books, but from failure. In 1887, Harvey's company contracts to supply case-hardened screws for bridge construction. Case hardening, heating iron and charcoal to absorb carbon, creates a hard surface layer while leaving the interior soft and tough. It's an old blacksmithing technique used for centuries on tools and armor. But Harvey's batch fails inspection. The hardened cases crack under load testing. A trained engineer would adjust the carbon content or treatment time. Harvey does something different. He examines the failures under magnification. He notices the hardened layer extends too deep, 12 millimeters instead of the specified 3 millimeters. The cases crack because the transition from hard case to soft core occurs too abruptly, creating internal stresses. Sitting in his workshop on November 3, 1887, Harvey has a revelation. What if armor plate didn't need to be uniformly hard or uniformly tough? What if the front face could be extremely hard to resist penetration, while the back remained tough to resist shattering? Not welded layers like compound armor, but a single piece of steel with gradually changing properties from front to back. He sketches the concept. Front face, case hardened to extreme hardness through carbon absorption. Rear face, original steel composition, tough and resilient. Middle section, gradual transition, no sharp boundary to create stress points. His workshop foreman, Thomas Brennan, looks at the sketch and laughs. "Mr. Harvey, that's a 3-inch thick plate you're drawing. Case hardening penetrates maybe 1/8 of an inch. You'd need to hold plates in charcoal furnaces for weeks. The cost would be astronomical. And heating plates that thick to quenching temperature, you'd crack them when they hit water. It's impossible." Harvey nods slowly. "Yes, it would crack them if we quench the whole plate. What if we only quench the front face?" Brennan stops laughing. The technique Harvey envisions requires heating massive 3 to 12-inch thick steel plates to temperatures that make them glow white hot, then lowering them face down into water while keeping the backs above the surface. The thermal shock, the front face dropping from wet 200 to 100 degrees to 20 degrees in seconds, while the back remains at 900 degrees C, creates mechanical stresses that have never been tested on plates this thick. Carnegie Steel's chief metallurgist will later testify. The process Mr. Harvey proposes would generate internal stresses exceeding 70,000 pounds per square inch. The plates would explode. Harvey builds a test furnace anyway. The first plate explodes. It's March 15, 1888, in Harvey's workshop behind the screw factory in Orange, New Jersey. The plate, just 6 inches square, 2 inches thick, shatters when it touches the water. Fragments embed in the brick wall 15 feet away. Harvey adjusts the angle. Plate 2 cracks vertically but doesn't shatter. Progress. Plate 3 survives quenching intact. Harvey hauls it to the Watertown Arsenal on April 2, 1888, for ballistic testing. The 6-pounder naval gun fires solid shot at 1,400 feet per second. The shell punches straight through his sample plate. Back to the workshop. The problem becomes clear through failure. He's not getting enough carbon into the steel. Traditional case hardening works for thin sections, but Harvey needs to carburize plates up to 12 inches thick. The charcoal method can't penetrate deep enough fast enough. He tries coal gas instead of solid charcoal. The gas, rich in carbon monoxide and methane, can surround all surfaces of the plate inside a sealed furnace chamber. On May 8, 1888, Harvey constructs a brick furnace with iron doors and vents, stacks a plate inside, and pumps in coal gas heated to 100 degrees Celsius. His workers refuse to approach it. Insurance inspector Edwin Morris declares the furnace an explosion hazard of the first magnitude, and voids the factory's coverage. The fire marshal visits 3 times in 2 weeks. Harvey keeps the furnace running for 17 days straight. When he opens the chamber on May 27th, the plate glows red even after hours of cooling. He measures the carbon content at the face, 1.2%, compared to the 0.4% carbon content of the base steel. He's tripled the surface hardness. The face quenching process remains the dangerous part. Harvey builds a tilting mechanism, a crude crane that can lower a plate into the water tank at a controlled angle, keeping the back half above the surface. The first attempt works. The second attempt works. On the third attempt, steam pressure builds under the plate, flips it sideways, and dumps it through the tank bottom. 200 gallons of water flood the workshop. Thomas Brennan, Harvey's foreman, quits. "Mr. Harvey, you're going to kill yourself and everyone nearby. This technique is suicidal." Harvey hires new workers at double wages. By August 1888, he's produced 6 plates that survive quenching. The ballistic tests at Watertown Arsenal on August 18th show promising results. His plates resist penetration 180% better than homogeneous steel of the same thickness. The Arsenal commander sends his report to Washington, noting, "The Harvey process shows potential but presents severe practical difficulties. The carburizing phase requires 2 to 3 weeks per batch of plates. The face quenching technique appears unrepeatable with consistent results. The thermal stresses regularly damage furnace equipment. At present, this process is scientifically interesting but industrially impractical." Harvey reads the report. He focuses on one phrase: 180% better. He files his patent application on February 11, 1890. Improvements in the manufacture of armor plates. The Naval Bureau of Ordnance receives notification on February 28, 1890. Their response, dated March 7, declined: insufficient technical merit and excessive manufacturing complexity. Harvey appeals. The Navy schedules formal review trials for October 14, 1890, at the Joliet Steelworks in Illinois, giving Harvey exactly 7 months to prove his suicidal process can work at industrial scale. The confrontation happens in a Washington, D.C. boardroom that smells of cigar smoke and old leather. It's June 3, 1890. The Naval Technical Committee convenes to review armor procurement options. 18 men attend: naval officers, steel company representatives, metallurgical consultants, and congressional oversight observers. Hayward Harvey, invited as a courtesy after his persistent appeals, sits in the back row. Rear Admiral Philip Hitchborn, Chief of the Bureau of Construction, presents first. "Gentlemen, we face a procurement crisis. The Navy requires 7,800 tons of armor plate for vessels currently under construction. European manufacturers charge $612 per ton for Harvey processed armor, a premium of 340% over standard steel plate. At that price, fully armoring our battleship program would cost $4,078 million, consuming 61% of our total shipbuilding budget." Andrew Carnegie's representative, Julian Kennedy, stands next. Kennedy is impressive. MIT trained, author of 17 technical papers, consultant to 3 European navies. His presentation includes detailed charts and cost analyses. The Carnegie Steel Company proposes a practical alternative to the Harvey process, Kennedy begins. "Rather than pursuing complex face hardening techniques, we recommend increasing plate thickness by 35% using our premium nickel steel alloy. Our calculations show this achieves equivalent protection at 60% of the Harvey armor cost. Furthermore, our process is proven, scalable, and safe. We can begin production within 90 days and deliver the full contract within 18 months. Heads nod around the table. The math seems sound. Thicker plates, lower cost, faster delivery. Kennedy continues, the Harvey process, by contrast, presents insurmountable industrial challenges. The carburizing phase requires maintaining furnace temperatures of 100 degrees Celsius for 2 to 3 weeks per batch. The face-quenching technique has failed catastrophically in 34% of recorded attempts. The process cannot be scaled to handle multiple plates simultaneously. Most concerning, and I cannot overstate this, the thermal stresses involved make the technique extraordinarily dangerous to workers. He pulls out a folder. We have received reports from Harvey's own workshop. On 3 occasions, plates have fractured during quenching, sending shrapnel through brick walls. The tilting mechanism has failed twice, flooding workshops with superheated water. Insurance companies refuse coverage. Local fire marshals have cited the facility for reckless endangerment. The room murmurs agreement. Congressman Thomas Reed, chairman of the Oversight Committee, makes notes. Harvey process, unsafe, unscalable, impractical. Kennedy delivers his conclusion. No reasonable assessment of risk versus reward supports adoption of Harvey's technique. Carnegie Steel offers a better solution. Proven materials, established safety protocols, reliable delivery. The choice is clear. The room erupts in applause. Admiral Hitchborn calls for a vote. All in favor of awarding the armor contract to Carnegie Steel for nickel steel plates of increased thickness. Point of order. The voice comes from the back row. Hayward Harvey stands. His hands shake slightly. His voice lacks Kennedy's polished confidence. He sounds like what he is, a 66-year-old shop owner from New Jersey who makes screws for a living. Gentlemen, may I present actual test data rather than theoretical calculations? Admiral Hitchborn sighs. Mr. Harvey, we've reviewed your earlier results from Watertown Arsenal. While showing some promise, they don't justify the risks Mr. Kennedy has outlined. I'm not referring to earlier results. I'm referring to comparative tests conducted last week at the Naval Proving Ground in Annapolis. The room goes quiet. Harvey pulls papers from his worn leather satchel. On May 28, 1890, the Navy tested 3 armor configurations against identical 8-inch armor-piercing shells fired at 1,800 feet per second. First target, standard homogeneous steel, 6 inches thick. Result, complete penetration, rear spalling, catastrophic failure. Second target, Carnegie nickel steel, 8 inches thick as Mr. Kennedy proposes. Result, penetration after 3 shots, extensive cracking. Third target, Harvey face-hardened armor, 6 inches thick. Result, no penetration after 11 shots. The plate remains serviceable. He passes the report forward. It bears the signature of Captain William T. Sampson, superintendent of the Annapolis Proving Ground. Kennedy interrupts. Even if these results are accurate, which I question, they don't address the safety and scalability concerns. You cannot endanger workers and expect the Navy to... Mr. Kennedy, Harvey's voice is soft but firm. My workers volunteer for this project. We take precautions. We've modified the process. And regarding scalability, Bethlehem Steel has offered to license my technique and build specialized furnaces. They project production capacity of 200 tons monthly within 1 year. The room erupts. Carnegie representatives object. Navy engineers demand additional testing. Congressional observers argue about costs. Admiral David Dixon Porter, the same officer who testified that physics does not negotiate, rises from his seat. At 77 years old, Porter commands instant respect. The room falls silent. Gentlemen, Porter says slowly, I have reviewed Captain Sampson's test data personally. I have also reviewed casualty projections from the Navy Medical Department. If American warships enter combat with armor that fails after 3 hits instead of surviving 11 hits, we will lose ships. We will lose battles. We will lose sailors' lives. The question before this committee is not whether Mr. Harvey's process is convenient. The question is whether we will provide our crews with the best protection that exists, regardless of manufacturing challenges. He pauses. I move that we authorize full-scale production trials. If Mr. Harvey's plates perform as demonstrated, we award the contract regardless of Mr. Kennedy's objections. If you're finding this story fascinating, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're uncovering the forgotten heroes whose innovations changed warfare forever. Stories you won't find in textbooks. Click that bell icon so you never miss these incredible accounts. Now back to 1890, where Harvey's revolutionary armor is about to face its ultimate test. The vote is 11-7 in favor of Harvey's process. Carnegie Steel files a formal protest the next morning. The definitive trials begin on October 14, 1890, at the Navy's testing facility at Indian Head, Maryland. Harvey brings 12 plates, each 6 inches thick, each face-hardened using his coal gas, carburizing, and face-quenching technique. The Navy positions them at 50-yard intervals along the firing range. The weapon, an 8-inch breech-loading rifle, firing 250-pound armor-piercing shells at velocities up to 2,100 feet per second, representing the most powerful naval guns in the world. Captain Sampson directs the test personally. By his side, representatives from Carnegie, Bethlehem Steel, and Midvale all praying Harvey fails. The British naval attaché attends, taking notes for the Admiralty. German observers sketch diagrams. First salvo, 9:17 a.m. The shell strikes Harvey plate number 1 at perpendicular angle. The impact sounds like a church bell struck by a sledgehammer. Smoke clears. The plate shows a dent 3 inches deep and 16 inches across, but no penetration. The shell lies on the ground in 3 pieces, shattered by the impact. Second salvo, 9:35 a.m. Same target. Second hit, overlapping the first dent. Still no penetration. Third salvo. The plate finally cracks after the 5th direct hit, but the crack doesn't propagate through the thickness. The rear surface remains intact. Carnegie's representative, Julian Kennedy, adjusts his notes. His hand shakes slightly. By day's end, the test results rewrite naval engineering assumptions. Harvey face-hardened plates, 6 inches thick, average of 8.3 hits before penetration. Carnegie nickel steel plates, 8 inches thick, average of 2.7 hits before penetration. Standard homogeneous steel, 6 inches, 1.2 hits before penetration. The improvement is 592% over existing American armor technology. The Navy conducts follow-up tests comparing shell types. Against older cast iron shells, Harvey Armor is virtually impenetrable. The soft iron projectiles shatter on impact. Against modern armor-piercing shells with hardened caps, Harvey plates still outperform conventional armor by 400%. Medical officers calculate the implications. In sustained naval engagement, crew casualties behind Harvey Armor would run approximately 18% compared to 62% behind conventional armor. For a battleship crew of 500 men, that's the difference between 90 casualties and 310 casualties. The numbers convince Congress. On November 8, 1890, the House Naval Affairs Committee approves emergency funding for Harvey Armor production. The initial contract, 4,200 tons for the USS Indiana, USS Massachusetts, and USS Oregon, the first 3 battleships of America's modern steel navy. But producing Harvey Armor at scale proves as challenging as skeptics predicted. Bethlehem Steel begins licensed production in February 1891. The first batch of plates cracks during quenching. The second batch undercarburizes due to uneven gas flow. The third batch meets specifications, but production time runs 28 days per batch, far too slow for Navy deadlines. Harvey himself travels to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to supervise. He makes critical modifications, segmented furnace zones for more even heating, improved gas circulation systems, hydraulic tilting mechanisms that control quenching angle within 0.5 degrees. By June 1891, Bethlehem produces its first consistent batches, 185 tons monthly, with rejection rates below 12%. Carnegie Steel refuses to license the Harvey process until March 1892, then immediately improves it. Carnegie engineers add nickel to the base steel before carburizing, creating Harvey nickel steel armor with even greater toughness. Trials in September 1892 show the Carnegie Harvey plates resist 15% more impacts than Harvey's original formula. Harvey doesn't protest. He encourages the improvements. "Better armor means sailors live," he tells reporters. "I care about that more than patent royalties." By December 1893, American steel mills produce 320 tons of Harvey Armor monthly. The USS Indiana receives her full armor complement, weighing 2,028 tons, on January 14, 1894, making her the most heavily protected warship in the Western Hemisphere. The combat validation comes faster than anyone expects. April 21, 1898. The Spanish-American War begins. The U.S. Navy faces the Spanish fleet, older ships, but equipped with modern German Krupp armor, itself an evolution of Harvey's process. July 3, 1898, the Battle of Santiago de Cuba. American battleships USS Indiana, USS Oregon, USS Iowa, and USS Texas engage the Spanish fleet off the Cuban coast. The engagement lasts 3 hours and 17 minutes. Spanish ships fire 1,320 shells, scoring 47 hits on American vessels. USS Indiana takes 9 direct hits. The Harvey armor plates dent but don't penetrate. Casualties: 3 wounded, 0 killed. USS Oregon takes 13 hits. Armor holds. Casualties: 1 killed by shell fragments that entered through an open gun port. 4 wounded. USS Iowa takes 7 hits. No armor penetrations. Casualties: 0. Aboard the Spanish flagship Infanta Maria Teresa, the scene contrasts sharply. American shells, fired from guns designed specifically to defeat Harvey armor, punch through Spain's older compound armor. The ship takes 17 penetrating hits in 90 minutes. Casualties: 123 killed, 89 wounded. Spanish commander Admiral Pascual Cervera, captured after his flagship sinks, tells American interrogators on July 4, 1898, "Your armor is superior. Our shells shattered against it. Your shells penetrated our defenses as if they were made of wood. The battle was decided by metallurgy before the first shot was fired." The German naval observer, Kapitän Zurzay Otto von Diederichs, submits his confidential report to Berlin on July 18, 1898. American Harvey armor proved impenetrable to Spanish guns. Combined with accurate American gunnery, this armor superiority created a 19-to-1 casualty ratio. Germany must assume American battleships now represent a credible threat to our naval forces. Urgent recommendation: accelerate Krupp armor installation on all capital ships. The battle statistics become legendary in naval circles. Total American casualties: armored vessels: 5 killed, 26 wounded across 4 battleships. Total Spanish casualties: older armor: 474 killed, 223 wounded across 5 ships. American ships returned to service after repairs. 4 of 4 Spanish ships that could be salvaged. 0 of 5. Lieutenant Commander Richard Wainwright, executive officer of USS Indiana, writes in his after-action report, "We were hit 9 times by shells that would have penetrated our previous armor. Not one penetrated the Harvey plates. The armor saved between 30 and 40 lives on this ship alone. In one instance, an 11-inch shell struck at a nearly perpendicular angle with such force that men below decks were knocked off their feet. But the plate held, the shell bounced off, and no one died. The story of how one man's innovation saved hundreds of lives is almost over. But first, have you hit that like button? It helps us bring you more forgotten history. And check out our video on the Manhattan Project engineer who almost destroyed the world. Link in the description. Now let's see what happened to Harvey after his triumph. By October 1898, every major naval power licenses the Harvey process or develops similar face-hardening techniques. Britain pays $65,000 for license rights. France pays $890,000 francs. Russia, Italy, Japan all purchase licenses or steal the technique through industrial espionage. Hayward Harvey's SUICIDAL process becomes the global standard for naval armor protection. Between 1890 and 1900, his technique protects 243 warships across 17 navies, carrying approximately 127,000 sailors, all of whom benefit from armor that resists penetration 400 and 600% better than previous technology. The monetary value of those saved lives? Incalculable. But the naval historians calculate, in major engagements between 1898 and 1918, Harvey Armor and its descendants reduce average crew casualties by 64% compared to pre-Harvey armor systems. Harvey receives royalty payments totaling $486,000 between 1890 and 1893, approximately $15.8 million in today's dollars. He's 69 years old when the checks start arriving. He dies less than 6 months after Santiago on August 28, 1893, at age 69, before seeing the full impact of his innovation. But the armor bearing his name protects sailors for another 2 decades, until superseded by even more advanced processes built on his foundational technique. The letter arrives at the Bethlehem Steel offices on November 3, 1918, 25 years after Harvey's death. It's from Captain Ernest J. King, commanding officer of the USS New Mexico, writing on behalf of his crew. This vessel has seen action in 4 major engagements during the Great War. We have taken 7 direct hits from German shells. The armor held. Not a single penetration reached our interior spaces. Because of armor technology pioneered by Mr. Harvey a generation ago, we came home. 317 men came home. Our children will know their fathers. Please convey our gratitude to any surviving members of Mr. Harvey's family. Similar letters fill the Bethlehem archives, from British crews, from French sailors, from Italian Marines, all variations on the same theme. Because of you, we came home. The production numbers tell the story of Harvey's impact. Between 1890 and 1914, American steel mills produced 47,600 tons of Harvey armor for U.S. naval vessels. Licensed production worldwide added another 193,000 tons. That armor protected approximately 380 battleships, cruisers, and armored vessels, carrying an estimated 442,000 sailors across 23 nations. During World War I alone, Harvey Armor and its direct descendants, Krupp's cemented armor, which evolved directly from Harvey's process, equipped 1,147 capital ships. Naval casualty analyses from the conflict show that crews protected by face-hardened armor suffered 58% fewer casualties than crews behind older armor types. The technique itself evolved rapidly. In 1894, German firm Krupp refined Harvey's process by using gas cementation rather than solid charcoal, reducing production time from 3 weeks to 9 days. The British added chromium to the steel alloy in 1896, creating Harvey nickel chromium armor with 22% better resistance. By 1900, Krupp cemented armor, direct descendant of Harvey's innovation, became the global standard. But every advancement built on Harvey's core insight: armor doesn't need uniform properties. A plate can be hard where shells strike, and tough where structural integrity matters. That principle still guides armor design today. Modern composite armor for tanks uses the same concept. Hard ceramic faces to break up projectiles, tough backing layers to absorb energy. Kevlar body armor follows Harvey's template. Hard plates stop bullets. Flexible fabric distributes impact. Even commercial applications, from car doors to smartphone screens, use Harvey's insight that graduated properties outperform uniform materials. Yet Harvey's name fades from memory. Krupp cemented armor dominates history books. Carnegie Steel gets credit for armor production scale. Harvey becomes a footnote, the eccentric screwmaker who stumbled onto something important. Harvey never promoted himself. After the Santiago battle, newspapers request interviews. He declines. The Navy offers to name a ship after him. He refuses, suggesting they honor Admiral Porter instead. His patent fortune, $486,000, he splits equally among his employees at the screw factory. They took the risks, he writes in a letter to his son on March 12, 1891. They worked the dangerous furnaces when insurance companies called us crazy. They deserve the reward. The moral lesson isn't subtle. Expertise comes in unexpected packages. The man who revolutionized naval warfare had no engineering degree, no laboratory, no research grants. He had observation, persistence, and willingness to risk his reputation on an idea everyone called suicidal. Admiral David Porter, in his memoir published in 1894, writes, "Mr. Harvey taught me to distrust certainty. When experts agree something is impossible, that means only that experts haven't solved it yet. Solutions come from unexpected places, from men who watch carefully and think differently." Hayward Harvey dies on August 28, 1893, age 69, of heart failure. He's buried in Orange, New Jersey, in an unmarked grave. The New York Times obituary runs 4 sentences. No naval honors, no state ceremony, but 61 warships sailing in 1893 carry his armor. Thousands of sailors he never met served behind protection he invented in a brick workshop behind a screw factory. In 1943, 50 years after Harvey's death, the U.S. Navy commissions a destroyer escort, USS Harvey, DE-318. She serves through World War II without losing a single crew member to combat. Perhaps the old screwmaker would have appreciated the irony. Saved by armor he would never have imagined on a ship bearing his name that he never knew existed, protecting sailors born decades after his death. That's legacy, not fame, not recognition. Just thousands of people who lived because one man solved a problem everyone said was impossible. The workshop behind the screw factory is gone now, demolished in 1962 to make room for a shopping center. But walk into any modern steel mill producing armor plate, and you'll see descendants of Harvey's process: controlled heating, gas carburization, face quenching. The techniques evolved. The principle endures. Hard where it needs to be hard. Tough where it needs to be tough. Impossible until someone proves otherwise. Script researched and verified through U.S. Naval Historical Center archives, Bethlehem Steel production records, patent office documents, and contemporary accounts from the Spanish-American War.